Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode number 74 of Fraternity Foodie. My name is Mike Ialon. I am the CEO of Greek University. We call these segments Fraternity Foodie because there is nothing like great food to bring people together. Get ready for another incredible guest. Today we have on our show Adam Hollmann. Adam is the Assistant Director of Student Life Programming at University of Detroit Mercy. He's also the Deputy Title IX Coordinator. So we are going to talk today about a wide range of topics, from disabilities to college programming to student organizations to Title IX issues. So there is really something here in this interview for absolutely everybody on the planet. Let's get started. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thank you, Michael. I'm very, very privileged and honored to be here. And I'm looking forward to helping out anyone here with the podcast, and also those students who are kind of finishing up and looking at master's programs as well.
That is fantastic. I know you have something for everybody out there, whether it be college administrators or students. So I just think this is going to be a great resource for so many years. I really appreciate you being here. Let's talk a little bit about your background. I know you decided on Indiana University in Bloomington for your undergraduate experience. So why was IU the best choice for you?
Yeah, so Indiana, so it's kind of funny. I am a Hoosier at heart, but I moved around a little bit as a child. And for me, when going to Indiana University was for me to get away from what I had been doing. So I went to parochial schools my entire life, and most of my family members went to parochial schools. And I just wanted to do something different. Indiana really opened my eyes to a large institution, and IU is obviously about 40,000 students, and it was a great opportunity. And it's the first opportunity I had to leave home, and I just enjoyed my time there. And again, I went to small schools, so for me, I knew everybody. Indiana, you're in a big fishbowl, but that's only the beginning. And so it was great opportunity. I still stay close to a lot of my advisors and everything at IU. And actually, I'm up here in Michigan, surrounded by Michigan State fans. So I'm a Hoosier stuck in the midden state, I like to say.
Love it. Absolutely love it. IU is one of my favorite campuses. I mean, it's just so beautiful. One of my favorite things to do is just go for a run in the Greek Village area and just look at some of those houses that just blow me away every single time. Oh, so nice. So nice. So there are also many students that I'm sure are listening today, and they might be considering a master's in higher education. And I know that you received that degree at Ole Miss, another one of my favorite institutions to visit because of that Greek life presence, of course. So what was that experience like at Ole Miss, getting your master's in higher education? And what's your advice for other students that are considering their master's in higher ed?
Yeah, so I left Indiana University back in, now this is going to mark how old I am, but so I graduated Indiana back in 2001, and that was right after 9/11, kind of similar to what's going on with COVID. There's not a lot of places hiring and everything. So I left Indiana. I was connected by an alumnus. Also, I worked at a small college down in Florida, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and I just worked on athletics and recreation. At that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. But when I got down there, I realized I wanted to stay in higher education in some capacity. And that's when I kind of fell upon the master's degree in college student personnel. And again, I used my connections, Indiana alumnus connection. And that's where I kind of fell into Ole Miss. And I realized Florida was not the place for me. And I kind of inched closer to home. I kind of detoured to a SEC school. So anyone that's considering a master's program, I would say, if you look at the institution you're coming from, and I would say find something contrasting. So I went from a big institution, Indiana University, and then I went to although SEC schools are large, Ole Miss is a smaller SEC school, and I want to say when I was there were only about 15,000 students. I'm not exactly sure what the enrollment is today, but so I looked at that. The other thing is, so my undergrad was in recreation athletics, but I knew my master's degree, I was smart enough to say, you know what, I need to go beyond the sports and recreation area, and that's where I fell into college student personnel. And for all the students out there, I'd say, look, if you have a strong background in any kind of leadership, whether you're an RA or something else, think about other areas in the college environment. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Title IX and some of the stuff that kind of fell in my lap. I'll discuss that. But I would say if you come from a big research university, kind of look at the middle tier schools, because there's you can get a lot more information from those institutions.
I love it. That's great advice. Now you've been working at University of Detroit Mercy for over 15 years, which I think is just amazing, your dedication to that institution. So what makes this particular campus such a special place for you?
Well, I'll just start by saying, first off, that this was supposed to be my 2-year stop. I kind of violated my own. Originally, it was supposed to be a 2-year stop, and it just one thing led to another. When I left the South, I knew I wanted to have my Midwest roots back, and it just kind of on paper it looks like I fit like a glove, but it wasn't exactly that. So I just think I did different things. I've worn different hats at the institution. Now I'm doing some things with Title IX, but at the same time I taught a bridge academic program. So for academic class, I was adjunct faculty for 4 years, and that worked really well. I started a family as well. So for that one, it just kind of one thing led to another, and I do a lot of another thing why I like Detroit Mercy is because I am a booster with the athletic department, and so I've kind of used one career and kind of like develop that. So I think that's just, you have to find that niche for you. And so for a lot of young folks out there, most people are going to move from job to job every couple of years. I did change responsibilities. I've been in the same office, but I did change from recreation into student activities. So.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about your role now. Your role is Assistant Director of Student Life Programming, and you've been in that role for over 7 years. So what is your process like in planning campus-wide programming, and how can you be sure that it hits the mark every single time?
Yes. So one thing is we develop a group, and then we mostly coordinate this with a lot of the RAs have to do a lot of programming. So we have a programming team, and we do have a large number of commuter student population. Actually, we have more commuters now with the onset of COVID, and a lot of students are coming back to campus. They're commuting. So I actually have been doing a lot of focus groups during the summer. And so it's a good thing, because we can't make changes unless we know what's going on with our populations and our regular participants. So we would do a lot of these Zoom meetings like we are today, and then so that's really the best way, because it doesn't make sense to bring in a speaker and no one's going to attend. Even though we do Zoom sessions, it does make sense if we have participants on the other end of the form as well. So it's just get inside and basically ask the question of, what do students want? Is this appealing to you, and things like that. So it's best to actually talk to your audience and figure out what exactly are their needs and what's going to work best for their situation.
I like that. The student input, I think, is absolutely critical to make sure they're part of that decision-making process. As a speaker, that's exactly what I want. I want to make sure that I'm addressing what the students want to hear. And if there's a disconnect in there somewhere, then obviously you can run into problems. So that sounds very smart to me. Let's talk a little bit about Title IX, because you're also the Deputy Title IX Coordinator for the university. So for anybody who's listening right now that might not be familiar with that, what are your responsibilities in that role, and what do you think is challenging about that role in particular?
So great question. So at the University of Detroit Mercy, I work primarily on the undergraduate campus. We do have 3 campuses, and there's the law campus and the dental campus. So a lot of times there will be different investigations that are going to occur, and so I come from McNichols campus, but a lot of times I have to go down to law and dental, and then we'll just we'll do some programs, and that's kind of the nice part. But then if there is an investigation, we look into the different scenarios, and it's important. It's nice doing the Title IX and work, because I get to leave my campus, and also and the nice thing about it is there's no biases. So a lot of times when we get these situations, some students might say, I know Professor Hollmann, and I know these other folks, but this way there are no biases at all. So it's a great it's a great resource to have as well. So one thing I want to talk about the Title IX is, and especially anyone young, so reading about this. So Title IX is not the most glamorous, talking about doing hearings, investigative reports and everything. This kind of fell in my lap a few years ago, and I will just say, if a higher up individual from the university, whether that be a dean of students or in my case, I'm discussing the university attorney, called me one day, and the first thing that I said in the back of my mind is, oh shoot, what did I do now? Because it's usually not a good thing when a university attorney calls you. Now I'm at a small institution, so most people know who they are and everything. And so I would just say this to everyone young: when you're getting that position, if the university attorney ever, or not just the university attorney, or maybe a big VP calls you and asks you if you want to be a part of something, always accept that opportunity, because you never know if they're going to ask again. So in that situation, that's kind of how it fell in my lap, because, and this happened a few years ago, right before the holiday break, I just had to look at a case that they wanted to see if they had grounds for appeal. Long story short, it was 2 days before the December holiday. So I took home about 60 pages of reports and the case that was just done a few months ago, and I basically had to come up with a determination about it. So I know that it sounds pretty heavy, but I'll just say to everyone young listening to this, when you get in that first position, if a higher up does ask you to do something, don't always put your mind to the negative. And that was what I did, is just take a look at the opportunity, because that was about 6.5 years ago now. And now with Title IX, it's something that really it adds to not only just adds to your resume, but it's a great opportunity for student engagement as well.
I totally agree. I think that additional responsibility makes you just more well-rounded and gets you access to different things and new things. And I think as a professional, that's all you want, is those types of opportunities to learn new things and get added exposure to these types of situations. So I think it's fantastic that you got that role. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, we frequently talk about Greek organizations on this show for obvious reasons, but I'm always interested in similar types of organizations around the country. So can you tell us more about the Evans Scholars, which is an organization that's not Greek, but they have a very strong community and network? Tell us more.
Yeah, so when I was a student at Indiana University, I was a part of the Evans Scholars, and so there are now 17 chapter houses across the country, and so basically I grew up working on a golf course where I caddied a lot, and so I received a free tuition scholarship, and then so it's basically, we don't go through the rush process, but at Indiana University, I know you talked about Indiana University in the beginning here. We are right on Greek Row, so we're stationed next to some fraternities and sororities. We don't go through the recruiting process, but we do, we run different events, or we kind of act like a fraternity. We don't do rush, but we participate with the Greek community, whether that's for some of the intramural sports and things like that. But it's just a great opportunity, because you are kind of thrown into the house, and now so you're able to do, again, excuse me for a second, I lost my train of thought. So it's great because you're going to work with different people who have the same background as you are. So for me, it's those people, I haven't actually seen a lot of those folks, but I still communicate with them, whether it be LinkedIn. I text my class all the time. So it's just another place to be involved.
That's wonderful. Sounds like a great network. I had really no idea. So I love learning about other organizations that kind of function similar ways. And it sounds like that's exactly.
So they have a scholarship house, and I know just about every house, it says Evans Scholars, but it says scholarship house. Mm-hmm. And at just about all the institutions now have females also live in the house. I know at Indiana University, just because I'm in their alumni network, I believe the president is a female, and actually back when I was in the house, that was unheard of to have a female leader, but I think that is it's a microcosm sign of the times. And so now it's great, because I know the Indiana house, I'll just say that they have one floor of the house is all dedicated for the female. And so again, back then, all the girls back in the early 2000s, they didn't necessarily live in the house, they lived in the dorms across the way. But now it's fully intertwined where the males and females are part of the environment.
I love it. That sounds absolutely fantastic. I also want our audience to learn a little bit more about disabilities because, in my opinion, we're just not talking about it enough. I think many times it's overlooked in terms of student organizations going out and recruiting people who have disabilities that add to the diversity of our organizations and ultimately make our organizations better. So tell us a little bit more about how you navigate life with a disability.
Yeah, so I'll just say every day is a challenge, but it's not a challenge that cannot be overcome every single day. So just so everyone listening is, I have multiple sclerosis. So it's a chronic disease. There is no cure for it, but that doesn't mean I just have to get a little bit creative with my job, and I have to make some of those alterations as well. So, Indiana University is a great university, and I was there about 2 years ago. I'll just say it's a very hilly campus. So that would, even when I went there, it made it an adventure. So I would just say every day I think really cognitively about things, because everyone's like, oh, I gotta count my steps when they're working out. But actually I count my steps not for workout purpose, just because I know if I have to go up and down steps or walk around places, it can make everything very challenging. But it's not something that I can overcome. So with that being said, I would say to your organizations, any kind of Greek event you have, just think about the setting. And actually in this one too is a lot of institutions of higher learning, they are older buildings and maybe they're not accessible. So just think about if you're going to think about you're doing recruitment and then you have an individual, whether male or female, they have, like myself, I have a walking aid. Like I walk with a cane now, and I don't have a scooter, but I've been thinking about that might be my next step. But if you have somebody that has mobility issues, are you prepared? Is your organization prepared? How are you going to do that? You want to intertwine them into your community. So you just want to think about some of the things. And so with that being said, I just something to kind of consider, well, what can we do? Now that's someone like myself, it is an invisible, I do have an invisible disability. But you just have to kind of think through some of these things when you're doing different events and programs.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important for our audience to consider stuff like that, and who might be sitting on the sidelines, who might not be a part of our events that we want them to be a part of our events. I'm also curious, because you're in charge of programming for maybe some of the large scale events that you put on at UD Mercy, is anything being done in terms of sign language interpreters, caption media for videos, or assistive listening devices? Are any of those being used on campus at UD Mercy?
Yeah, so, and that's one thing when all this COVID really hit, we were basically all the employees, we were sent home in March. And so we really had to rethink, well, how are we going to offer these programs and everything? So now if we put any videos up, we do utilize a captioning service. And actually one of the big programs I do every year is a Veterans Day program. So obviously there's restrictions to having things on site, but if we put any video up, I know our marketing department is very, very keen. You're going to have to caption everything, and that way, if you have somebody who they can understand everything. So we do use a captioning service. So there's a little cost to it, but it's definitely worth it. And so it makes live programs like what we're doing here can be a little difficult. I know even in Zoom here, you can turn the captions on and off. So that's one area that we do things. I'd also say, so that's probably the most simplest one, is using the caption servicing. And then the other thing I would kind of say for different programs is have the organizations really reach out to people in the campus community, because there's going to be a lot of people like me. I'm now more open about my disability, but for a few years, I tried to keep it quiet. But once I had some incidents where I fell, I was like, well, the cat was out of the bag.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I understand completely. I think you're so right about that. And you're also very familiar with fraternities and sororities, as well as other student organizations on campus. So I'm just curious from your perspective, how do we address these systems that I think have been created in areas such as recruitment to ensure that every student on campus who has a physical disability is able to participate, given the wide range of events and locations for some of these recruitment events?
Yeah, so for that, that's a good question. So I think there's ways to make changes. I would just say number one, make sure that the facilities are don't necessarily have to be up to code, but then you are being compliant with ADA, the American with Disabilities Act. No one has to go download that or anything, but you just have to make sure that your entrances, whether if you have a wheelchair or for me, when I go to a building, I always look for a couple things. I look for how many steps do I have to go up. I'm not counting my steps on Fitbit or anything, but how many steps do I physically have to go up? Like for example, like I have my cane right here. Of course, I'm in my house, but that way, if you're doing those things that, so you don't want to scare people off, and also whatever email or marketing materials you have, put something about ADA compliant or something of that nature, saying, we still, because you want to have your events open to everybody. And so the other thing is I would almost say, as we move on, you want to do any programs, just talk with your Greek advisor and see what you can do so that you are compliant. So we're open to all students, because a lot of students will say, well, I'm not going to go to that because I have issues walking in and out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the leaders of these organizations be willing to, make those changes as well.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. One of the ideas that was brought up on that recent town hall was putting a name, a phone number, or an email address on the flyer so you can contact if you need to have any accommodations. And that makes it a little bit easier and more approachable, I think. So that way you're not saying, well, this organization has to make an exception for me. It's actually the organization going out of their way to say, we have a process for you and we want you to participate, right?
Yeah, so and sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. So like what I always do my Veterans Day program every year. And so when I send out this email, this also goes out to external as well. And I always say, if anyone needs ADA accommodations, I just list my phone number and my email address, because I know that group, there's a lot of them are a little bit older. And so a lot of those groups, the first thing they want to know, is there an elevator to get to the room, because it's on the higher level in our student union building. And also they won't leave my phone number, and then also as well, so that they know how to get a hold of me if I were planning a recruitment event. So
Yeah, that's really good. I'm also curious around social disabilities. How do we help potential new members who have social disabilities? I'm thinking about anxiety, somebody who's on the spectrum, ADHD, or communication disorders. How can we help these potential new members of our organizations?
So what I would say with that one is, have your organizations, whether you pair up with fraternity sorority, find somebody locally that would be involved with, let's say, your counseling center, and do a program. And I would say kind of keep so have a conversation, have the therapist or the counselor there, so that way you're be an open conversation. Actually, if you're doing that, always offer food, because that's the number one incentive for any college student. And then have them just discuss some of those issues, because communication can be intimidating. And I even had one student say, to me recently, it's like, I want to be a part of this, but I'm not good on Zoom and them seeing my face. I said, well, that's okay. We want to hear your voice as well. Just turn your camera off or something, but just have somebody from the counseling center. And I also I would also say to anyone else listening, is go out and find somebody within a local organization. With that being said, like myself, I go to a support group for my MS. Now, I'm not saying you do an event with anyone with multiple sclerosis, but there's so many different disabilities, from social anxiety to eating disorders and so on. So reach out to some of those organizations And now with technology, we can use that, and you could bring somebody in, and we can have a Zoom conversation like we are today. And then it could be like a smaller program. It could be 8 or 9 or 10 individuals.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're doing this Zoom interview today because I do think it helps with awareness. Is there anything else that we can do to increase disability awareness on campuses so that way students in the general student population have a better understanding?
I think what's most important is that we have the conversation. A lot of times, students say, well, I did that program last year, I did it 2 years ago. I think right now there's a bigger awareness because we are very social distance now. And then, I even have some students that, I haven't really seen my classmates in the last few months. So I just think open the conversation, find a good partner on the campus. I would start at the wellness center, but maybe not just the wellness center, but maybe just depending on your institution. And then that way, if you can form something, and then you could also do a different program. That way we can have these discussions, because the last thing we want somebody to do is not attend an event just because, I couldn't make it there. It didn't seem very forthcoming. And I just think that sometimes you have to, make those extra connections to make it a bigger and better event.
I love it. Thank you so much for what you've done here. I think this is great for students to listen to. If students or maybe other college administrators that are listening right now, if they have any additional questions for you, what's the best place to reach you?
So I would say LinkedIn, that's how we were connected.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also, I'll just give out my email address. I know you probably have some show notes and things like that. It's just simple. My email address is adamhollmann@gmail.com. And then actually LinkedIn is probably the best. And then I know a lot of students, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile yet, you definitely want to have one of those. And like, Michael, you found me through this. And then we just started chatting, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday last week. So that's really the way to be connected and everything. I would just say, one thing I would just say to everybody is, if you know somebody, or maybe you do have a disability, don't keep it to yourself. I think we all need to be our own advocate. And then if you know somebody who is not going to participate, we all need to be our own advocate, and we can make small changes, and eventually there will be some big changes as well. So don't be afraid of those things. And it's just, we're all in it together. So.
That's a wonderful message, especially right now. Adam spells his last name Hollmann. So feel free to look him up on LinkedIn and continue the conversation with him there. He's a fantastic advocate for the students at UD Mercy. I really appreciate everything that you do for the students there. You've been doing it a long time, and I know the students appreciate the work that you do. I want to tell you on behalf of the students and the organizations on campus that you've represented them well, and I love the advocacy work that you're doing for students with disabilities here with this interview today. So thank you so much for being a part of it.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Have a great day. And to our audience, thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful for you, be sure to like it and share it with other students and other administrators. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Fraternity Foodie. Bye for now.